Indian Women by Shiv K. Kumar. We begin each episode talking about the age in which the poem was written. Sometimes we go back to the country, if it's a new country. Well, this is Indian poetry in English and written in the middle of the 20th century. We refer to this period as the post-colonial era. And what does that mean? Countries which were ruled by other nations, India, for example, ruled by the British, we refer to that period as the colonial period. And once the rulers left us and the country became independent, we refer to that period as the post-colonial. You know, there are certain features which are common all over the world to post-colonial countries. One could be the language which they have taken from their rulers. So it could be Portuguese or it could be French. In our case, of course, it is English. So much of an influence we've had by the rulers that the poetry now continues to sound like an imitation of the poems that were written by the ruling nation. That we will see as we go along with this poem. So, we are looking at a post-colonial Indian poem, Indian Women, written by Professor Shiv K. Kumar. Not very well known, not very popular, not a great poet, but to me, he's something special. I must share with you that he was my professor, head of the department during my PG days. And I was lucky to even do a part of my thesis under him. You know, I worked on the letters of Keats. But let's come back to the poet. Shiv K. Kumar, 1921 to 2017. He was born in Lahore. Yes, this is pre-independent India, before the partition. He moved to Delhi only in 1947 when we had so many people, lakhs of thousands of people moving across the borders. He has a PhD from Cambridge. He was a lecturer for many years at Osmania University, then at the University of Hyderabad. He was a Fulbright scholar and wrote poetry, short stories, plays, as well as a novel. He is a translator, a critic, and winner of the Sahitya Akademi Award, which after all is one of the most important awards in our country. So we are looking at one of his poems, Indian Women. Let's see what he says about Indian women. Indian Women is a short poem. Let me begin by reading it. In this triple-baked continent, women don't etch angry eyebrows on mud walls. He's talking about Indian women, but he's talking about their silence probably. He's talking about the lack of courage to express themselves. And he calls this continent of ours, this country of ours, triple-baked continent. In fact, he's talking of the three kinds of oppression that our women have to face, have to go through. The sun, sex, and poverty. So these women have to face all three. And they don't etch angry eyebrows on mud walls. I think those two lines are telling us so much. What kind of a house are they living in? House which has mud walls. I think that immediately brings to our mind the idea that they are poor. They don't etch angry eyebrows. You know, they don't give vent to their feelings, their emotions. They've been taught to suppress them, probably. And that is why he says they do not draw anything on the mud walls. Etch angry eyebrows, because the mood is one of anger. but then it is suppressed anger. So what do? Patiently they sit like empty pitchers on the mouth of the village well. So again, something more you know about the kind of life they lead. Not for them running water. They will have to walk to the village well and draw water. And probably there's a big queue there. Maybe there's only one well in the village, and therefore they are waiting for their chance, right? So they sit. And how do they sit? Like empty pitchers, because they brought their pots, they brought their pitchers to collect water. Maybe the well is dry already, and therefore their pitchers are empty. Or, as I mentioned, they're probably waiting for their chance to draw water from the well. So they are sitting there. And as they sit there, how do they pass their time? Pleating hope in each braid of their Mississippi long hair. This is why post-colonial poetry becomes interesting to me. Why is it Mississippi long hair? Can't it be Ganges long hair, Ganga long hair, Yamuna, Kaveri, Krishna, Godavari, Narmada? Don't we have our own rivers? But this is the effect of having grown up during the colonial period, having read all those English poems, American also, because it's Mississippi that he's talking about, not the Thames. Pleating hope in each braid of their Mississippi long hair. Where is the hope? It's one life of despair, of hopelessness. So probably they can only dream of hope as they braid, as they plait their hair. Looking deep into the water's mirror for the moisture in their eyes. Where is the water? The well is probably dry. The pitchers are probably empty. So where do you see water? Only in the moisture of their eyes. I think it's a beautiful description of the condition of our women here. With zodiac doodlings on the sands, they guard their tattooed thighs. I don't know whether it is still there in some parts of our country, where men show that their ownership, their possession of women by having their names, the names of the men, written on the inner parts of the woman's body. Here he is talking about the thighs, tattooed on the thighs. Waiting. And what do? Waiting for their men's return, till even the shadows roll up their contours and are gone beyond the hills. All that they can do is wait. Probably the men have gone out to work, maybe to another town, to another village, or maybe onto their fields. But all that they can do is to wait. The entire picture is one of total despair, hopelessness, poverty, want, lack of any kind of joy in the lives of these women. When we read a poem, a mental image should be created. It all depends on how well the poet is able to create the scene for us. That is what we call imagery. Here, I think the imagery is superb. Can't you see the village? Can't you see the women? Can't you see the sun, the pictures, the well, etc., etc. So the imagery, I think, here is very good. Metaphors and similes are there in ever so many poems. You know them. But the Mississippi long hair, for example, the triple-baked continent, etc. There are symbols. You remember a symbol, when something stands for something else. So here, when we talk about empty pitchers becomes a symbol for the emptiness of the lives of these women. Nothing seems to be happening there. There is personification, the village well, the mouth of the village well, so you see personification too. So even in this short poem, the poet is able to weave ever so many figures of speech into it. I began by saying that this poem was written maybe in the middle of the last century. What is interesting is the poet calls this Indian women. And then I ask myself, is it a picture of me? And then the answer is obvious. No, I'm not a village woman. I live in urban India. I'm an educated woman. I don't sit at the mouth of a well with an empty pitcher. I've got running water in my house, etc., etc. Well, that's what literature is all about. That's what poetry is all about. But there is a note of sadness, as I do remember, that nothing probably has changed for the rural women of India. Right? They are still sitting with their empty pitchers, waiting for their husbands to come back. And one question that does arise, do these women have an identity of their own? Did they have it then? Do they have it now? I leave you with that question.